we're going to go ahead and get started. Looks like we've got a nice group joining us. So welcome everyone to the F&I operations session. Appreciate you taking time out of your busy. That at the end of the 45 minutes that you at least learned something. It was informative. We're going to try to make it as interesting and as much fun as possible. We've got a great group of panelists with us today, and I'm going to let each one of them introduce themselves. My name is Dave Herring. I am the general manager of Hitachi Capital of America, the work truck finance division. We're based in Norwalk, Connecticut, and have been involved in financing of work trucks. We are celebrating our 20th anniversary in that industry this month, so real excited about that. So my next panelist, Dana, would you introduce yourself?
Hey everyone,
please?
I'm Dana Nateman. I'm from Miami, Florida. I'm the finance director for a dealer group down here with a few different locations. We're an OEM dealer, and my background is in banking and wealth management. Matt, you want to go next?
All right, Francis. Oh, Matt.
Either one. So, hey, Matt Wiethoff, Ally Financial. I'm responsible for the commercial services group. Basically handles all the business vehicle and commercial vehicle financing for Ally. I'm located in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I joined Ally about almost 4 years ago from Daimler. So I basically cover the whole country for sales and credit, and excited to have the discussion today and pick up some new insight in what's going on in the market.
All right, Francis.
Good afternoon. My name is Francis Hopping. I work up here in Northern California for a Ford dealer, Corning Ford. Been in the car business now for about 25 years. And Corning Ford is a large commercial dealer in Northern California. And so, yeah, I'm here and I'm kind of excited to talk finance.
All right, excellent. We've got, we got some beautiful parts of the country we represented here. We've got Miami and Florida and California and South Carolina. And then we've got, I would say about 2 weeks ago, and I live here in Dallas, Texas, and we would not be having this. I would not be participating 2 weeks ago. We would have no power, no water. But fortunately, everything has resolved itself, and we're back to normalcy. And I think today it's 72 degrees. So. All good here. All right. So my first question for the panelists is, obviously this year has been unlike any other year that any of us ever had in our career. And it's all related to the outbreak of COVID. And COVID has impacted everything within the dealership. There isn't any part of the dealership and the way the dealership conducts its business that it's not impacted. But we're going to talk about the F&I role and the F&I function around what was the biggest impact. And I'm going to direct that question to you, Francis. First of all, how did COVID impact you, and what did y'all do differently to respond to it in California?
Well, staffing's been probably our biggest issue, not only with banks being shorthanded and working from home and not being able to contact the people that we normally maybe see on a regular basis or deal with, or maybe they're running minimal staffs. On our end, again, at the dealership level, we've had there were days there where we had a fraction of the staff working, and we've been busy. Like most commercial dealerships around us, this year has been a record year, and so there was no lack of business. It just took a little extra effort to get things done.
What about on the F&I side, when customers obviously touchless e-docs, were you able to find lenders that were able to help you meet the expectations of your customers that were concerned about safety?
We were. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah,
go ahead, Dana. Go ahead.
A lot of lenders became more flexible with electronic fundings. no need to FedEx contract packages in, which was, something that was good for the e-docs because they were documents by email. Someone could sign remote. There were many people who were not comfortable coming into the dealership. They would take delivery of their trucks at their locations. So definitely an adjustment. And, on the other side, the F&I office became initially, we had to change into helping our customers with deferrals in anticipation of the concerns of what was to come with COVID. So our rules changed. And even though we ended up being very busy, like Francis said, there was that initial hesitation, which, changed the role of our office too.
A lot more remote deliveries this year
Matt,
than in the past.
yeah. What was that, Francis,
I
about
said
delivery?
we did a record number of remote deliveries this year.
Oh,
So, taking the.
Do you think that's something you'll continue? Yeah, in the future?
Yes, and we've actually, we probably have a dozen full-time drivers that drive for us and do nothing but deliveries. And for us, and where we're situated, we're in a population 6,000 town, and we sell quite a few rigs. So we're selling to quite a large area, and it's just more convenient for our customers to not have to make the trip and drive an hour or 2 hours or wherever they're from to pick up a vehicle when we can drop it off at their house and it can be done in 10 minutes. And then, COVID's kind of played into that. It's an advantage in the COVID era.
So Matt, obviously all of us were impacted. The entire ecosystem was put upside down. I was at the work truck show in Indianapolis and was told to get home as quickly as possible, and nobody can travel. And then after that, everything just kind of, what's going to happen in the next hour? How are we going to get credit, folks? How are we going to get deals underwritten? Ally probably went through a lot of that. So from a lending perspective, what are some of the changes y'all have made around COVID to satisfy the expectations?
Yeah, I think as Dana mentioned, there was a big shift, right? When the pandemic first, was fully forming, we took the extraordinary step and offered all of our customers deferral options, right? So we took 21% of our customers took us up on that. So it was first about kind of stabilizing our customers, making sure and looking after doing it right for them. So, we got through that and stabilized. And I think from a dealer standpoint, it was, reaching out. We took extraordinary measures there in terms of deferring their floor plan expenses and a lot of different other measures to make sure we looked after our dealers so they could get through. So, and a large part of that, we had to kind of shift to the Paycheck Protection Program. We offered that, changed, with Small Business Administration as Ally Bank. We're able to offer that to our dealers as well. So we kind of stabilized our customer, and we kind of focused on, okay, what comes next in terms of originating loans. So we looked, obviously there were some certain sectors hit hardest in certain regions like the Northeast and California, Washington early on. So, it was a couple dry months there in April, May that we kind of worked through, but it's been, like we said, from a adjustment standpoint, how do we get, our fleet customers engaged, and how do you virtually service them and meet their needs? So where you would normally go with your dealer and meet with fleet customers and things and talk to customers and work them through the underwriting process, that's all done virtually now. So we made sure we had all the technology in place, a lot of Zoom calls with dealers. And we just, went from there in terms of step by step. How do you now digitally do processes that were otherwise paper? So it's actually good. It was a pull forward, acceleration of technology. And, obviously from a market standpoint, it came roaring back because the underwriting aspects have changed and you looked at segments quite differently. That last mile delivery, which was kind of volatile, and expediters and those type of things you saw, those can be kind of cyclical. Now they're almost counter-cyclical in a COVID environment because they're like a requisite essential business. So we also kind of are mindful of that and the way we approach the business. And that's obviously been a tremendous piece of growth because after May, from June on, it's been rip roaring. So.
All right, so we've obviously would love to put COVID behind us, and I think so. I'm gonna move on to some other questions. I'll get that one out of the way, since we're all looking forward to the next several quarters without having to deal with what COVID may or may not bring to our customers or our dealers. So the next question is around just the overall impact around the financing. We all, from a dealer perspective, we all know how important it is to retain that customer and keep them from, being able to sell them the truck, but also be able to sell them financing as well. And so with the cost of funds and these, the rates being so low for banks these days, they're able to really be very aggressive to their customers when it comes to financing their titled assets. And we've seen it more and more over the last, especially this year, where they want to quote a deal where before they wouldn't even talk to their customer. They just said, I'll take care of your deposits. I'll take care of your real estate. I'll take care of everything, but I'll let somebody else worry about your titled trucks. So Dana, can you speak to how do you compete with a customer when he walks in and says, hey, I've already got my financing arranged with my local bank and I need to keep it. How do you
It's a
keep
really
them with you?
great question because it has happened so much more often in the last year. And when that happens, the first thing I think about is how can I provide value to the customer that their bank can't? More likely than not, their rate is going to be lower because they're going bank direct to lender. They're not going through the dealer. And so I usually like to talk about the fact that, if it's someone that's being offered by their bank financing on a commercial loan, they likely are an established business who has good credit history and who may qualify for a corporate only loan. And that's something that Hitachi's been doing for a while. Ally also participates in these corp only loans. And more often than not, their bank is not going to offer them a corp only loan. And for those of you that don't know what that is, it's a loan that only goes in the business name without a personal guarantor. So the personal guarantor or the owner doesn't exist on the loan, so no credit is pulled on the personal side. This can be really favorable because people don't like to have their credit pulled, and it also removes them from any liability on the loan. So I like to talk about that with the customer, and I also like to tell them how quickly we can get the deal funded by doing it in-house. So with all these different things that we talk about with them, we're just adding value and trying to overcome the fact that, yes, maybe your bank can lend you money, but that's also going to diminish some of your working capital if you have a working capital line with them. So it's trying to add value all around.
Francis, do you see that same problem there in your market?
We do, and I think Dana, hit the nail on the head. You want to give those customers options, and in most cases, we can compete with local banks and giving them, either in rate or term, or the ability to finance, like Dana said, without a guarantor, which is important to most businesses. Depending on the rate, of course. It's just providing options for those people. We seem to, we have good options with Ally and with you guys, Ford Credit, obviously, and then we do finance through a few local banks as well. So, more options, giving the customer more options, and different banks have different criteria. Maybe it's, they need a guarantor, or maybe they need more money down, or, and a lot of customers don't, maybe they've checked with their bank, but they haven't actually got the loan through their bank. And so, financing, a 650, maybe their local bank doesn't finance those, didn't realize that, that's what they were talking about. So, understanding that, giving the customer some options, and just explaining that to the customer so that they understand that, seems to work for us. So.
Matt, do you have anything to add around, obviously we all, as lenders, we want all the loans, right? We don't want any of the local banks to steal any of our business, but we are seeing more of that. Is there something Ally does to kind of make sure and help the dealer?
Yeah, I think, obviously we're an indirect lender and we only source the business from dealers. So I think maybe to just bit more color on what Dana was alluding to was, ease of doing business and speed is so key. So if you're want to take down units this year, it's been about companies adding units or need a unit quickly. So to the extent that they can walk on the dealership and Dana and Francis can get them funding on the spot, the dialogue with a bank can be a little bit time consuming, the underwriting process. And oh, by the way, if you want an upfit on that unit, if they're not a true commercial lender, how apt, are they to let you body up that truck, and do they want a bunch of documentation for that body, right? So I think from us, we try to differentiate in the commercial space a little bit with the ease of doing business. We understand the collateral, the equipment, with dedicated underwriting, so that we can make the decision quick. We can get you an approval in less than 30 minutes, and we can get the dealer and the deal funded very quickly. So I think that's a key point.
Touch on that one more time.
All right.
The other thing
Sure,
too,
Dana.
with the local banks, typically they're not reporting to commercial sources for credit reporting. So that's another thing that you can always tell your customer, hey,
Yeah.
Go ahead and go through your local bank, but should you need financing next time, at least you'll have built a credit history if you use one of our sources.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah, that's a great point. That pay net, is so important. And without it, it's, if you don't have a history there, it's going to be difficult to ever get your name off of that loan. All right. So next question is around, obviously we all know that inventories are on the new side is not where we'd like for them to be. So we're having to find other options, and those options obviously are going to be the late model, used trucks, where you can find them at a reasonable price. I was talking to a dealer the other day, and they went to an auction, and they went to 2 auctions with plenty of money and plenty of, excitement to buy, and they left with nothing because all the prices were way too expensive. So when you do get that used truck and you do find a way to get it sold, how is the financing now playing into with your typical, lenders that normally would finance new equipment? Francis, do you want to go first?
Sure. It's an ongoing struggle financing commercial trucks for a couple different reasons. And the biggest one is if it's an upfitted truck, how do you convey the upfit to the bank? And in a lot of cases, we're dealing with upfits that are, $50,000, $60,000 upfit. The ad in the Blue Book might only be, $2,000. And, it's 2 years old and it has a lot more value than that. If it's something we sold originally, we'll have the original invoice on it. We can convey that to the bank and send that over. But determining value, or presenting the bank with the actual value of the truck is probably the hardest part of that. And then, what they're going to lend on percentage wise. So, if the chassis books for $50,000, it's got a $50,000, crane body on it. Are they going to lend 110% of the $50,000 chassis, or are they going to give me 90,000, which is really what that truck's probably worth. So it'll vary bank to bank, but it's an ongoing issue.
Dana, what's your thoughts around financing?
So I think
used
that
trucks?
the first thing that comes into play right now is how's the customer credit? Buying used trucks is a lot easier for people who have established credit and good personal credit. And the reason is because a lot of times the lenders can overlook a truck not booking because they want to make a deal because the customer has good credit. I know that Hitachi, for example, uses a system where if a deal is submitted for a used truck and the customer is an A customer, they don't book that truck out. So that's really interesting. And the reason they're doing that is because they're saying, hey, we're comfortable lending this customer this amount of money. And if you're selling it to them for that price, we believe in the product and the price. And then on the Ally side, it's been really interesting because even though they traditionally used NADA and other book values like many of the other auto commercial lenders, they've become very flexible. I had a used FTR deal yesterday that the analyst said, send it over to me. I'll go online, I'll take comp values from other selling prices, and I'll get this deal done for you. So I think the lenders are coming around and they're trying to make this new environment work. They know that the book is not speaking to the values that are over there at the auctions right now and what people are buying these trucks for. And we don't know how long these production issues are going to last, when we're going to get inventory, which is just going to keep driving the prices up on these used trucks.
Yeah, and I think that inventory story follows all the way from
Yeah.
the OEM to the upfitters, right? Before pre-pandemic, you could get a bodied up service utility body in 3 weeks. Now, good luck. We'll see you in 8-10 weeks, whatever. So for us, the one of the things that we've been focusing on is we have a smart auction platform where we have a monthly commercial sale. Those sales are obviously oversubscribed, but it provides two things. One, we get unload our kind of off lease or repossessed units at a great price, but at the same time, it establishes an instant baseline too, right? If you buy one of those trucks, whatever we paid for it at our auction, go ahead and roll it, because we'll accept that price. But yeah, for sure, used is something that we're looking at. I think mileage is always, getting a lot of higher mileage looks these days. So, to the extent we understand the collateral and the credit, that's key.
I think Matt hit on a very good point there when it talks about understanding the asset that you're lending. From when it's a new piece of equipment, there's really, the specs on it aren't really as important. But when it comes to, evaluating and that particular used equipment, dealers are not really doing a good job telling you a good story about that truck. They're just submitting a deal. It's a used truck. It's got whatever model it is. It's got miles on it, but there's a lot of bells and whistles that they leave off of that description when they submit it into credit, and will have a tremendous impact when you go to value it out. And so we constantly are going back and saying, hey, anything more? Can you send us pictures? And sometimes they have them, sometimes they don't. But boy, when you do see a submittal with a lot of detail, we're able to sometimes get 100% of financing requests on a 3 to 4 year old unit. So, but to Matt's point, lenders are having to do like Hitachi and Ally, because we have to. We don't have the new equipment to look at from a volume perspective. So we've got to find ways to meet the demands of our dealers. Next question, guys, is around options. Francis brought that up around, and we've already kind of touched on it, so I'm not sure we really need to go in a lot of detail. That as a dealership, you need to have more than just 1 or 2 lenders that you do business with if you're selling commercial trucks. And Dana, back in the day, I remember you would walk into an F&I person and they would just point to the Rolodex. And for all of you that are much younger, may not know what a Rolodex is. It's a place where you keep all your contacts. And so he would say, I could get by with, a few. Now you need a lot more than just a couple to be able to take care of your financing opportunities. So Dana, talk about how do you maintain all those relationships with all the different lenders, and how do you keep them? How do you know where to put a deal to have the most
So I think
success?
what's really important is talking to your lenders when you get signed up with them and saying, hey, what's your niche? What are you good at? What are you looking for? And a lot of the time they'll give you so much information that will help you the next time you have a deal. And of course, as an F&I person, the ultimate goal is to get the customer the best terms and to make the most money on the back end. So it's important that we take into account all these different things when we decide who we're going to use. For example, there's lenders out in the Midwest that are totally credit-based. A used truck, they don't even value it out. It's not important, but they're so heavy on the credit, the time in business. They have to have 10 years. They have to have a certain pay net score. So sometimes you'll get into the really nitty gritty of what they need to get your deal done. But once you know that, you can make decisions quickly, less credit pulls for the customer, hopefully only one. And if you're using Dealer Track or Route One, it makes it really easy because you can just send to the lender that you know is the best fit for this deal.
So Francis, how do you keep track of, I've seen F&I folks that try to build a spreadsheet, and they'll take some criteria and load it all into a formula and say, this is the best place for, because you don't want to subject your guarantor to a lot of nicks on their credit with a pool. So how do you know where to have the best chance to get it approved? How do you keep track of that in your head to know where to go?
Well, we've got really good people. So like Dana's probably, she's an expert. We have 2 or 3 sales managers that work all our deals, and that's what they do every day. When we see the structure on a car deal, by the time it gets loaded into Route 1, we have a pretty good understanding of what we're going to need and where that deal is going to go, based on the structure and the vehicle and the customer. So, each deal is a little different, and there's somewhere you might throw it out there and see if Allie's a player on it, or Hitachi's going to give us the best call. But there's some basic guidelines that we're just that we deal with every day, and these guys are experts, and trust them to submit it and present it in a way that gives the customer the best terms and us the best back end.
So what would be your recommendation, Francis, for somebody who's obviously, selling commercial trucks, and it's a pretty good share of the types of trucks that they sell and types of customers? How many lenders do you think they need to have a relationship with to really be successful finding the right financing and right financing package for that truck?
Well, I would say
in today's market,
as many as possible. I would say that in general, we're a Ford Ford dealer, and so Ford Credit is one of our strong lenders, and we have 2 or 3 other banks that do a majority of commercial. We probably have four solid banks that do commercial. And each one's a little different. One has great rates and great terms, maybe extended terms. It requires a personal guarantor. So depending on the structure of your deal, you may need 72 months on that, or maybe give the customer an 84-month option if that's really what they're after. We try to discourage 84 months, as I'm sure everybody does. But when trucks are 100, we're selling trucks that are upfitted, they're $150,000, and people are putting 20, 30 grand down, 40 grand down, and giving the customer a couple options or more options is really the key to delivering that rig. So to answer your question, I would say as many as possible. I think we have, counting them out, probably 4 or 5 that we deal with on a pretty consistent basis, that do a majority of our commercial business.
Dana, how many do you think you have right now that you have a list of, that you probably over 30-day, 45-day business cycle would you
about
use?
10 or 11, probably around there. But remember that our business is not just medium duty. We do some heavy duty, which is going to be different from a lot of the dealers on here. So we have, many different upfits, and due to the types of upfits, sometimes there's lenders that really specialize. And then also when we have a product that, maybe one truck, a Vactor truck could be, $400,000. That person might not want to provide financials. So then you're going to use a lender that has an app-only limit that's very high. So there's just so many different factors that come in when you are selling different types of equipment and different types of work trucks.
Yeah, it's such a challenge. It is such a challenge, because every lender has their own little niche now. And Ally has their own little pocket they like to play in, and Hitachi has their own, and nobody really, and I'm sure it's got to be extremely frustrating for the dealerships and the F&I folks to really go, why can't you all just, eat from the same bowl of cereal? Why can't you, as we say in Texas, why can't you just all get along? Well, Matt and I really don't want to. Matt and I, we each want to have our own little thing here and our own little lane to be in, but it's going to obviously be a little bit more difficult for the dealerships. So kind of have to make do with what you got. And Francis, 4 or 5, and you said the other day you'd like to have more than that, right?
More options, the better. And again, certain banks like Dana said, they have certain guidelines, and your deals have to conform to those. And so, not every deal is the same. And so having more options is better, for sure.
I think appetites change too, depending on where that lender's business is focused. You can have a lender that is really great on the East Coast. They have lots of East Coast dealers signed up. And then you can have a lender in California that, with the emissions laws changing, they might have gotten burned with some of their, used trucks, or, everybody having to buy new trucks. So you just don't, it could be a lender's response to their environment too. And so you have to be ready to move with the changes, because a lender's appetite might be one thing one day, it could change 6 months from now. And if you don't have sources, you can get caught in a situation where you don't know where to send the deal. And as we know, the more time we take to get them approved, the more likely we are to lose them.
Yeah, that's true. So I'm going to move over to technology. And there's two facets of the technology. One of them is, the actual technology that allows all of us to do our jobs. And Matt spoke about the fact that we're now doing Zoom calls. I had never participated in a Zoom call prior to COVID. It was all about getting on a plane and flying to a meeting and getting in a hotel and sitting, maybe 2 or 3 hours and then flying back home. So it is a lot easier. It is a lot more convenient. It does take a little getting used to. And I'm wondering how much of that's going to be part of our future. So we'll see, but I think it's definitely here to stay. So what are some of the technology innovations in the F&I world around portals, around eDocs? What are some of the things you really like, and what are some things you think we can improve on as lenders? Either one, both of y'all.
Well, we touched on a few of those. E-contracting is obviously something that's kind of taken off in the last year. With Ford, it's great because we get funded right away, so it's an advantage for us. Our F&I managers, may have a different opinion of it, depending on how the Wi-Fi is working, or how our internet connection is, and then coaching the customer along with it. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes there's some technical difficulties, as I'm sure there are with any new technology stuff. Yeah, I think that you're going to see more and more of that moving forward, for various different reasons, and we embrace it.
One thing that's been a little challenging for me is, as we go digital, people are not coming in to sign their credit app. We're emailing everything, and we've been seeing some digital signatures. And the issue we're having is that not all lenders will accept a digital signature on their credit application. So as the technology changes, we have to really be careful how we adjust to make sure that we're following all the protocols, because the last thing you want to do is, you try to save time, do something digitally instead of having them print it, and then you can't send it anywhere. And sometimes the deal will go through, sometimes it'll get kicked back. The other thing that I had talked to Mercedes-Benz about is they use a scan center. So the contracts are FedExed in, and I think Ally also uses a scan center. The contracts are scanned in that center, and then they're reviewed by an analyst for funding. And one of the things that happened this year during COVID was there was some kind of COVID outbreak at the scan center, and none of the deals could be funded. So they had talked about moving to a digital scan funding, kind of like what Hitachi does, where you just scan your documents, you don't actually FedEx them in. And so I see the technology changing so much every day. And I think, as time passes, we're just going to see more and more changes.
Matt, what's Ally thinking about these days around the future of financing with the dealership on the indirect side? More or less
Yeah, I think
technology.
fintech overall is a space that's especially for commercial vehicles underappreciated. So all the complexity that can go into a commercial deal drives paper, and to the extent you can simplify the process and do it digitally, I think that's obviously what we're all focused on. So to the extent you're talking about an upfit and exchanging information, I think we're at a Work Truck Solutions event. They have all the information, all that is information asymmetry of what's on the unit. They could collect it and pass it through. So a lot to be done there. How do you clear stipulations on real time, and how do we do it so that it's dealer self-service so they can clear their own funding stipulations? So that's a big one for us. We do a lot of contracts a month, and to the extent that we can do it even faster by letting a dealer self-service, those are going to be key, again, to ease of doing business, so that they can get the deal funded quicker. And even on the underwriting side, more on the auto, but like proof of income, or in our case, financial statements. What is the upload capability that allows you to digitally message the customer on behalf of the dealer to go get that information so that it's already filled in and pre-populated, and a little bit less effort for the dealer to pack that into another system. So those are all things we're focused on. And again, optimizing processes that traditionally were paper, and making them more automated at the same time, no paper. So.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see where that, how far you can go in the commercial space around technology without losing that relationship. I still believe that that's still going to be required, and so it's going to be a fine line to how much do you push to a customer and how much do they want without giving up that relationship. So the other side of my question around technology is the technology with the truck. And there's been a lot, there's actually, and congruent with actually this session right now, is a discussion around electric vehicles. And there was the opening discussion, the fireside chat was around electric vehicles. And with Hitachi, we've been very, very involved over the last year and a half around electrification, and working side by side with several of the OEMs in their pursuit of that EV. So at the dealership level, what have you given any kind of thought as to when that day does come? When your salesman walks over a piece of paper and says, hey, Dana, Francis, I just sold an electric truck. Now I need for you to find some money to get it financed. What are you going to do? Have you thought about what's the
we're going to get it done
plan for that, or is it too far out?
It's definitely coming. We're Ford obviously is they've been committed here to their electric transits and F-150s. The Mach-E's sit in the showroom, so we're definitely moving that direction. I mean, in another 10 years, are we going to sell any gas engines? I mean, in California, we're not supposed to, supposedly, so we'll see. I mean, it's going to have a value just like anything else. Getting it financed should be just as much of a chore as it is now, I would imagine. Unless, Ally and Hitachi are going to start lending, 150% advances on electric vehicles, make it a lot easier.
Well, we're going to have to.
I think
we're going to have to, because we're going to
Yeah,
have to find a way to do it, right, Matt?
Topics that for a dealer is the I piece of F&I. What does a service contract look like, or a service agreement? Because some of the warranties on these units, what I've seen proposed by some of the OEMs, are pretty lengthy, right? So they're covering the battery, and there's a lot less moving parts on these things. So what does a service contract become? So from a how do you create value for the customer through a service contract, and what does that cost look like, and who's going to underwrite them? Obviously, the OEMs will be heavy-handed early on, but all the other aftermarket providers of service agreements, including Ally, it'll be interesting to see how that space develops for sure.
Dana, you got any
Yeah, I mean, just
thing to add around that? Are they even
They
talking
are,
about
yeah. And I
electrification
think
in Miami?
that all of us
Yeah.
are just kind of waiting to see which OEM comes out with the best product and who comes out with it the fastest. And then I think when they come out with their product, whoever their captive finance source is will probably have to be reactive, and they'll have to set up some kind of plan on the financing. And I imagine that all the lenders in this space will follow suit, and will actually be able to see what worked and what didn't work for those OEM captives, and to try to make, I guess, a plan. David and I had talked earlier about, how do we protect the batteries should the truck be repoed? How can we avoid them being stolen? There's so many different questions about the value, and I thought that was a really
Yeah, we every time we talk about, whether we're going to set up a loan or a lease, the asset management group they leave the meeting, they just hang up every time we ask them about what a possible residual could be on an electric truck, 4 or 5 years from the time that we originate the loan, and they just hang up. So somebody's going to have to put a number up, and nobody wants to be first, right, Matt? Nobody wants to be first, and
Yeah, I mean, how do you do a
tough.
72-month note if the warranty's done in 3 years? There's a little bit of you're lending on the credit there a little bit more than the asset, because you just don't know. But battery technology, is it completely obsolescent? In 3 or 4 years, I imagine early on it will be. So Dana's probably right. The captives are going to take on a lot of risk early on, but we're still going to have to help. On the used side, when those 5 years down the road, when those things are coming back, how do we support the dealers and find ways to validate that the battery's still good and it's got a useful life that kind of meets the terms of our agreements? So.
It's going to be exciting. Atachi talks about it a lot, and sometimes there's so many meetings I'm just tired of talking about electrification, because it's just, I keep thinking, well, is it really that close? And then every time I sit through one for an hour and I go, oh my God, it's around the corner. It's coming. And so we can't say, hey, we didn't see it coming. So we're going to be ready. We're going to have the docs ready. We're going to have programs ready. We're going to have leases. We're going to have loans. We're going to find those OEMs. They may not be OEMs any of us have heard of, but somebody's going to have to get out there, and they're going to find a truck that somebody's going to buy. And there's going to be a dealer network for it too, Francis. They're going to have to, even the non-OEMs. There's going to be traditional OEMs. The new OEMs are going to need the dealer to be able to get that truck in front of that end user. So everybody would like to go the Tesla model. I don't think that's really reasonable or realistic. Well, guys, we are coming up to the last couple of minutes before they're going to shut us down. Does anybody have anything they'd like to ask or add before we?
Maybe I'll throw one out there with 2 minutes to go. So that I mentioned the gig economy and that last mile delivery. Dana and Francis, selling vans and trucks to these customers. Those are some more challenging credits. You can see a lot of thin files, great personal credit, but all of a sudden they got into the last mile delivery business. So any thoughts on what you're seeing in your markets in terms of how that develops, and how best do you get information to close deals on those type of customers?
I've noticed a lot of lenders putting a focus on net worth. When we look at these newer businesses, they want to see what the customer looks like on paper, what business they were in before. And I think the reason they're doing that is because they think, hey, if I have to repossess this truck, does this person have any assets? And that's, it's a dire way of thinking, but it's the risk we take when we finance a new startup, whether their credit is good or bad. And so I think that net worth financial statements are really coming into play, definitely having to collect more information than on a typical deal.
Gotcha.
Seen this similar, either guarantors or financial statements, like you said, Dana. But moving forward, I think it's we'll overcome it and get it done. Just incrementally, like we have in the past.
Absolutely. And I think, some OEMs that have a captive source that maybe their production is low with what they're buying right now, because if they don't have a product to finance, they still have a business to run on the finance side. And so,
Right.
you're going to see those guys be a little more aggressive even with those startups. And we have seen that from the captive sources that maybe have a product that there's just very limited inventory out there. And now's the time to kind of ride that wave with those sources.
Yeah.
Well, before we get rudely just disconnected, I want to thank everyone. This has been a fantastic panel. I'm probably a little biased, but I think we hopefully a few folks that attended, they got something out of it. So thank you for participating, and look forward to continuing our conversation some other time down the road. And hope everybody stays well and stays safe. And we'll
Thanks, Dave.
talk
Appreciate
later.
it.
Thanks,
Dave,
Steve.
appreciate it. Dana, nice talking to you, Matt.
All right, thank you.
Nice meeting you.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Take care.